Hi, everyone. Welcome in. Thank you so much for being here to help us kick off this second week of Animal Law Weeks here at Harvard Law. Typically, we have 1 week that we do a year where we feature a great number of speakers, but this year we just had so much interest and so many incredible people that we wanted to invite that this is the second week this year that we're doing it. Thank you. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Tracye McQuirter, a writer, public health nutritionist, and 33-year vegan. She's been teaching people how and why to live a vegan lifestyle for 30 years now. She's the author of the book Ageless Vegan and the national bestseller By Any Greens Necessary. She directed the nation's first federally funded vegan nutrition program and was a nutrition advisor for the Black Women's Health Imperative. Tracye recently created the first of its kind free African-American vegan starter guide in partnership with Farm Sanctuary, and her work has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, Essence, Bon Appetit, Ebony, Veg News, Huffington Post, and more. Thank you so much. Please, just a quick reminder, this event is being recorded, so at the end, if you have questions, please wait for the mic to be handed to you. And one final thank you as well to our co-sponsors for this event, the Health Law Society, Food Law Society, Women's Law Association, and of course the Animal Law Policy Program. Thank you so much, and please join me in welcoming Tracye McQuirter.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you. Can you all hear me fine? How's the food? Oh, good. I can't wait. Okay, so my talk is, it's about your greens, not your genes, why I'm helping 10,000 Black women go vegan in 2020. So thank you again, Taylor. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody who is part of this event, for inviting me, for having me come. I think this is great. I've checked out some of the previous speakers that you've had over the last couple of years, and one of my favorites was Carol J. Adams, so I'm honored to be following in her footsteps and many others. So I'm going to share my own vegan story with you today and then talk about what led me to start the 10,000 Black vegan women movement and the paradigm shift that I hope it will help bring about. And then we'll have Q&A, which is my favorite part, so I hope you will have some good questions for me. So to begin, I have a question for all of you in the audience. How many of you are already vegan? Awesome. Okay, how many of you are vegetarian? Don't be shy. And, okay, great. And then how many of you just want to eat more vegan, but are omnivores now? Okay. Fantastic. And then is anyone here because someone forced them or dragged them and not interested in veganism at all? Anybody want to raise your hand for that? Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad that all of you are here. And as part of this talk, I hope to inspire you even more wherever you are in your healthy eating journey. So let's see. Oh, am I pointing it the wrong way? Oh, just this one?
Right here, I think. Okay.
I'll just point it longer and harder. Okay. So, when I was growing up, I never ever thought that I would be a vegan, a vegetarian, or just someone who liked healthy food, because as a child, I hated vegetables. I was that child who sat at the dinner table for an hour after everyone else pushing vegetables around on my plate until I was forced to eat them. So this is me in second grade, a avowed veggie hater. And in fact, this was the only way my mother could get me to eat vegetables without a fuss, slathered in a creamy sauce inside of a flaky pie crust. So what's not to love? And it's still one of my favorite foods today. So I was introduced to vegetarianism, tragically so, when I was in the 7th grade at Sidwell Friends School in Washington, D.C. My 7th grade teachers decided that our annual class camping trip should be all vegetarian. I thought this was a horrible idea, so I wrote a petition against it. And I got a few of my classmates to sign it, and only a few of them did. and I was promptly overruled. So for our camping trip, we had granola, fruit juice, and peanut butter and honey sandwiches on whole wheat bread. It was awful. I thought my teachers were crazy, and I never gave vegetarianism a second thought. So fast forward 7 years to 1986, when I was a sophomore at Amherst College, and to the day that my life changed forever. Our Black Student Union brought Dick Gregory, the global human rights activist and civil rights movement icon, to campus to talk about the state of Black America. But instead, he talked about the plate of Black America, about the health, politics, economics, and culture of what we ate, and why we should become vegetarians. Though it wasn't yet called intersectionality, discussing the interconnectedness of the myriad issues facing African Americans was the norm. And for Dick Gregory, food was a part of that conversation. Most of us in the audience didn't know that Gregory had become a vegetarian in 1965 as a result of his involvement in the civil rights movement, as a right-hand person to Martin Luther King Jr. and the practice of nonviolence. Gregory extended the practice and philosophy of nonviolence to the treatment of animals. In his 2000 memoir, Callous on My Soul, Gregory wrote, "I had been a participant in all of the major and most of the minor civil rights demonstrations of the early 60s. Under the leadership of Dr. King, I became convinced that nonviolence meant opposition to killing in any form. I felt the commandment, 'Thou shalt not kill,' applied to human beings, not only in their dealings with each other, war, lynching, assassination, murder, and the like, but in their practice of killing animals for food and sport. Animals and humans suffer and die alike. Violence causes the same pain, the same spilling of blood, the same stench of death, the same arrogant, cruel, and brutal taking of life." His focus on vegetarianism did not include health at first. He professed that he weighed 300 pounds and smoked, drank, and ate excessively. But all that changed in 1967 when he met renowned naturopathic physician, Dr. Alvenia Fulton. Dr. Fulton had opened the first health food store and vegetarian cafe on the south side of Chicago in 1958, called the Fultonia Health and Fasting Institute. She helped Gregory complete his first fast and become a healthy vegetarian, which changed his life. Together, they wrote Dick Gregory's Natural Diet for Folks Who Eat, Cooking with Mother Nature in 1974, which became an instant classic. Has anyone read this book? You have? Excellent. Okay. That's two of us. So by the time Gregory came to speak on our campus in 1986, he had been a vegetarian for nearly 20 years. In his speech, he traced the path of a hamburger from a cow on a factory farm to the slaughterhouse process, to a hamburger, to a clogged artery, to a heart attack, and it completely rocked my world. I was completely uninterested in healthy food before that lecture, despite my mother's best efforts when I was growing up. And I had gained 25 pounds during my first year. But I was going through a paradigm shift at the time as a result of courses I was taking on racism, sexism, classism, and more. So I was opening to questioning the way society dictated I should eat as well. After Gregory's lecture, I immediately went vegetarian and lasted for about a week. But I couldn't get what he said out of my mind, and when I went home for the summer a few months later, I got all the books from the library about vegetarianism that I could. This was years before the internet, and you had to physically go to the library. My mother and one of my sisters, Maria, read them too, and by the end of the summer, I had decided to go vegetarian. Well, it wasn't quite that easy. After that summer, I took my junior year away from Amherst and went to Kenya the first semester and Howard University the second semester. While I was arriving in Nairobi, Kenya as a brand new vegetarian and had no idea what to eat, the head of our program said they would not make separate vegetarian food just for me when they had 29 other students to cook for. So not knowing where to shop for my own food in Nairobi or how to cook it, I ate the meat and dairy-based foods that the program prepared, but there were 2 incidents that involved animals that let me know I would be a vegetarian again when I got back home. The first happened when our group traveled with Samburus for 2 weeks on safari. And can anyone tell which one is me? I love that it's hard to tell. I'm in the middle, white shirt, V-neck sweater with the big smile. Samburus are semi-nomadic camel and goat herders, and living and traveling with them for 2 weeks was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. As part of that 2 weeks, we climbed up to a mountain cave and brought 2 goats with us. Now, the night before, I had seen a baby goat being born at the home of the Samburu family we were staying with. I had never seen a human or non-human animal give birth before, so this had a profound effect on me. So the next day, we climbed up to the mountain cave and stayed for 2 nights, and we brought 2 live goats with us. The first night, the Samburu men prepared to cook the first goat. And I think I'm going to skip this part because we're eating. So they cooked the goat, the first goat, and I was determined that I wasn't going to eat it. And they made goat stew, and as they were spooning the bowls of soup and we were passing it among each other, I decided to eat it because it was smelling really good. But I felt guilty eating in front of the second goat that was tethered to a tree in front of me and wondered if it knew what had happened to its companion. The other incident that made me know I'd be a vegetarian when I returned home happened on the last night of our safari. Now, as part of the safari for that 2 weeks, we had spent several days on a lorry truck out on the Mara observing animals and learning about them. There were gazelles, giraffes, lions, elephants, zebras, and more. And again, this had a profound effect on me. We were on their turf, in their world, learning about them, and it was fascinating to me. So on the last night of safari, we went to a restaurant called the Carnivore on a luxury game reserve where at that time in 1986, they served the animals that were killed on safari. So we were all seated at a very long wooden table with a long plate in the middle of it. 4 waiters came out carrying a huge antelope-looking animal that had been roasted over a pit, and they plopped it down on the plate in the middle of the table, and I'll skip that part. Seeing the animal there was repulsive to me, and I didn't eat it. And I now know that it was because I had seen so many of these animals living and thriving in their own domain on safari. So I resolved that I was going to be a vegetarian when I went home. The next semester, I went to Howard University. I was living at home with my mom in DC, walking back and forth to campus. And I was thrilled to find that right up the street from Howard was a thriving community of Black vegetarians and vegans. This building, the House of Knowledge, held Brown Rice Cafe and health food store, a vegetarian bakery, and a Black bookstore. There were a total of 12 Black-owned vegan restaurants and health food stores throughout the city. And these were the only 100% vegan restaurants, cafes, and health food stores in the nation's capital starting in the early 1980s. And they were all Black-owned. They were Brown Rice Cafe, Blue Nile, Garrison's Natural Foods, Soul Vegetarian, Everlasting Life, Delights of the Garden, Green Cafe, Da Place, Sinbeb, August Moon, Sweet Jasmine, and Yours Naturally. There were also body ecology vegan food trucks at Howard University and other places around the city, which started in the 1970s. This diverse community included longtime activists from the civil rights and Black liberation movements, natural health entrepreneurs, raw foodists, Black Hebrew Israelites, the Asera Set Society, Muslims, college students, artists, and many more. And their influence was felt throughout the city at cultural festivals, Kwanzaa celebrations, and social justice rallies where vegan food was the main fare. I immersed myself in this community, soaking up their knowledge. I went to lectures, took cooking classes. My mother went with me, and learned where to shop, how to make it affordable, the politics of food, and much more. So by the time I returned to Amherst for my senior year, I was a confident and committed vegetarian. Still had that 25 extra pounds on me. I was still eating cheese though, so I still wasn't a vegan yet. I was so confident and committed, in fact, that I had written a letter that summer to the dean of students asking to be taken off of the meal plan so I could use the money to buy my own food. But the dean had declined my request, so I went to see him during my first week back to see if I could change his mind. I remember sitting in the dean's office across the desk from him and told him that I wanted him to make an exception for me. The dean said no again and seemed to have an attitude about it, so I asked him whom I could speak to above him, and he turned beet red. He said there was no one above him I could speak to, then stood up to let me know it was time for me to leave. I was pissed, so as I was walking out, I turned to him and said, with my hands on my hip, "Fine, if I can't get off the meal plan, then I want someone to fix me organic vegetarian meals based on a menu that I provide, and I want them to use separate pots and pans and utensils, and I want to see them cook it so I know they're doing it right." Well, I knew he would never go for that, so I waited for him to give in and let me get off the meal plan, but to my surprise, he called my bluff and told me to bring my menu to him, and we would start the next week. We stood in the doorway staring at each other until I finally said fine and walked out. So the following week, I reported to the hot kitchen in the basement of the dining hall and watched as an unhappy cook opened the packaging in front of me and prepared organic stir-fried tofu with mixed vegetables and brown rice in a freshly scoured pan on a cooktop. I tried to make small talk, but he just side-eyed me. When he finished cooking about 45 minutes later, I took my plate upstairs and sat with my friends who had almost finished eating by that time. And after one more day like this, I felt ridiculous, and I took my own self off the meal plan. I used my own money to buy groceries at the bread and circus in town. There was no Whole Foods on the East Coast then. Catching the bus each week, and I cooked my meals in the basement kitchen of the Charles Drew house where I lived and carried my plate of food over to the dining hall to eat with my friends. But as you know, it gets cold here in Massachusetts in the winter, at least it used to. And on many days, instead of carrying my plate of food over to Valentine, I would eat alone in the living room in front of the TV. But in spite of this, I stuck to my vegetarian eating. It had already become a part of my lifestyle. And I'd like to pause here and ask if anyone has any tissue or a napkin I can use so I can stop sniffing. Thank you. As I was preparing to graduate from Amherst, as a gift to myself, I decided to finally let go of cheese. That decision was purely mind over matter, though, because, oh, thank you. One moment. Y'all can edit this part out. But thank you. That decision was purely mind over matter, though, because I still love the taste and smell of cheese. But I also knew that cheese was the biggest source of artery-clogging saturated fat in the American diet, and I decided that my health was more important than the momentary pleasure of a piece of cheese in my mouth. So that is how I first became a vegan 33 years ago. And in my first 10 years of being vegan, I had a very demanding career as a museum director, working 50 to 60 hours a week. But I spent my evenings and weekends doing vegan cooking demos in DC and talking at churches, schools, community organizations, and health fairs throughout the city with my sister. And in 1997, at the urging of a friend who was an early adopter of the internet, we started one of the first vegan websites ever, which was also the first vegan website by and for African Americans. We called it blackvegetarians.org. And this is how it looked when we started it in 1997. And this is how it looked when we upgraded it in 2001. We also, a little different. We also co-founded an animal rights organization for people of color with two friends of ours during that time. We called it JASS, which stood for Justice for All Species. As part of that work, we interviewed Black animal rights activists, wrote articles about the conflation of the enslavement of African Americans and the oppression of animals. We leafleted at circuses and zoos in protest, and we always rooted our work in the history and present of African American experiences. I loved doing this vegan advocacy work so much that I eventually decided to change professions. I went back to school and got a master's in public health nutrition at NYU. And as Taylor said, I've been helping people go vegan for the past 30 years. So I've used a variety of different methods to do this work, including directing the first federally funded community-based vegan nutrition program and creating the first African-American vegan starter guide. Before 2015, there was not a free vegan starter guide that catered specifically to African Americans, though it was sorely needed. And this guide has been downloaded and ordered more than 500,000 times to show that the need was there. Before that, I wrote my first book, By Any Greens Necessary, a revolutionary guide for Black women who want to eat great, get healthy, lose weight, and look fat. And of course, that's PHAT. It was the first vegan diet book for Black women, and it helped thousands of people go vegan during the last decade. The New York Times cited it as one of the key books responsible for the popular rise of veganism among African Americans in the last decade, of which I'm very proud. Well, this is the 10th anniversary of the book, and to mark the occasion, I wanted to do something big and bold and necessary, so I created 10,000 Black Vegan Women. This is our logo. 10,000 Black Vegan Women is a movement to help 10,000 Black women go vegan this year, to get healthy now and for the rest of their lives. I want to truly change the health paradigm of Black women in this country. We're leaders in so many progressive ways, but we're in a crisis when it comes to our health. We experience the highest rates of chronic diseases like heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and certain cancers, the leading causes of disability and death in the country, and we're getting these diseases at younger ages. For example, of African American women ages 20 and older, 49% have heart diseases. Cardiovascular disease kills nearly 50,000 African American women every year. That's 137 Black women killed every single day from cardiovascular disease, and that is just from cardiovascular disease. African American women are also more likely to have diabetes and to experience stroke. We also experience the least healthy weight, with more than 50% considered obese and 80% considered overweight, which dramatically increases the risk factor for chronic diseases. As one researcher has stated, these are people who are in the prime of their life and should be contributing in all kinds of ways. So these diseases have a devastating effect, not just on the individual, but on the family, the community, and society in general. There are many state-sanctioned reasons that African Americans experience these conditions, including limited access to healthy food in our communities, also known as food apartheid, and targeted advertising and proliferation of low-nutrition, high-calorie food. In Franchise by Marcia Chatelain and in Supersizing Urban America by Chen Zhu, both authors talk about fast food restaurants targeting African American neighborhoods with the help of federal subsidies following the rebellions after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968. Indeed, African American neighborhoods in major cities went from having no fast food chains to being inundated with them. In fact, Zhu said in a 2017 Pacific Standard interview that 1965 dietary surveys show that before the proliferation of fast food franchises in the 1970s, African Americans in cities were twice as likely to meet the dietary recommendations for fruits, vegetables, and fiber than the population overall. But the opposite was true by 1996, and that targeting still continues today. The result has been higher rates of chronic diseases, particularly diabetes and obesity. And the healthy weight can start young. For Black girls living in cities, as most African Americans do, there are fewer opportunities for physical activity, outdoor exercise, and sports, whether in schools or in neighborhoods. Also, a 2010 study in Human Nature found that Black women between the ages of 49 and 55 were experiencing higher levels of oxidative stress, often referred to as a rusting of the cells or weathering, resulting from the ongoing effects of systemic white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, otherwise known as racism, resulting in premature aging and other unhealthy outcomes, including early death. In addition, a 2019 study in Science shows that an algorithm widely used in US hospitals to allocate healthcare to patients has been systematically discriminating against millions of Black people. This is only the latest example of systemic racism in the US medical industry. There is much work to be done. We continue to challenge and work to dismantle this systemic injustice, and we continue to take back control of our health. Eating whole, plant-based foods, along with exercising at least 30 minutes a day, being smoke-free, and maintaining a healthy weight can reduce the risk of developing chronic diseases by up to 80% or more. And of these lifestyle factors, eating healthy foods is the most important in preventing chronic diseases and premature disability and death, according to many studies, including a landmark 2013 Global Burden of Diseases study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. So, all of that is why I created the 10,000 Black Vegan Women movement, to help Black women live longer, healthier lives. I soft launched the 10,000 Black Vegan Women movement in February, just last month, 4 weeks ago, during Black History Month. And the official launch will be in May, which is the actual 10th anniversary of the publication of my By Any Means Necessary book. The months between February and May will also give us an opportunity to have 10,000 women sign up. And when they sign up, they immediately receive a Weekend Vegan 2-day jumpstart, which is free, to help them go vegan right away. And leading up to the official launch in May, they receive weekly Wellness Wednesday emails from me with nutrition tips, action items, and inspiration. And then in May, we start a series of free online 21-day fresh starts, which include online video training on the essentials of plant-based nutrition and food as it relates to social justice, animals, and the environment, as well as cooking videos, meal plans, vegan recipes, grocery shopping lists, meal prep guides, and nutrition tips, all in a supportive online community. And all of this is free. My goal is to give Black women the information, inspiration, and affirmation to live a long and healthy plant-based life they love. I wanted the program to be free so that it can be accessible to anyone who wants to participate. We soft launched through a concerted social media campaign which included using creative memes like these, and with a coordinated local and national media campaign. And the response from Black women has been incredible. In just these last 3.5 weeks, 2,300 women have already signed up. And here's an example of one person's response. Thank you so much for this opportunity. The one goal I had this year was to go vegan. I'm having a hard time getting started since I'm the only plant-based person in my home. Cannot wait until May. And then on Instagram, I get dozens of daily comments from women, from people in general, just talking about how much they love the idea. And on Saturday, this article was in Chowhound. So as I mentioned, the media coverage has been amazing as well. We've actually been in more than 150 different media outlets since we launched a few weeks ago. And this includes vegan and omnivore media. We've also been on all of the local morning shows in DC. And we had our first celeb endorsement by Maya. Anybody familiar with Maya? Grammy-winning singer and vegan. We've received funding support from national foundations as well. And we are at the very early stages of the 10,000 Black Vegan Women movement. Again, I just launched it 4 weeks ago. And already I'm emboldened by the response, the hunger, if you will, for this movement. Indeed, African Americans are the fastest growing vegan demographic. 8% of African Americans are vegan and vegetarian as compared to 3% of adults overall. How many people knew that? Okay. This is not a surprise to me. That's great, by the way. This is an article based on an article that just came out in the Washington Post, I think about 2 weeks ago now. But this percentage is not a surprise to me because I learned about veganism through Black culture and because we are pioneers in the vegan movement in this country. I always say that there has always been a river of African Americans eating plant-based foods running alongside this wider ocean of African Americans who are omnivores and eating the standard American diet and animal-based foods. And my experience teaching veganism over these years over these past 30 years has been that when you talked with people about the economic, political, historical, cultural, and social frameworks around eating healthier, they get it. And most folks want to act right away to do something differently to change the way they eat. After all, I would venture to say that most people do not want to be unhealthy, and most people do not want their loved ones to be unhealthy either. We just have different information at different times. Being vegan and eating the healthiest way we can is an act of self-love, self-care, self-preservation, and self-liberation. And I want people to experience what I do, which is that being vegan makes me feel free. I know that many people think that being vegan means feeling deprived, but in reality, the opposite is true. Because of what I eat, I can live a life that's kindest to people, animals, and the planet, and there is incredible freedom and fulfillment in that. And that's what I ultimately want for Black women everywhere, and the 10,000 Black vegan women movement is just the beginning. So, I hope that you will join the movement. Everybody is welcome to sign up. The focus is Black women, and I hope that you will spread the word. Thank you very much. So should we open the floor up for questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Could you tell us a little bit more about when you learned about the ties between the civil rights movement and the animal rights movement, and how exactly those are tied, especially if there were like economic ties and things like that?
Sure. So, Dick Gregory is probably the most famous example, as I mentioned. But there were Rosa Parks, for example, was a vegetarian. She before she passed, had been vegetarian for 40 years. And it was because they were very poor growing up. She did not have a lot of nutritious food to eat. And so part of her, what she has said is that part of her self-liberation, this is my term, was to be sure that she was well nourished and that she was eating well. They're in the Black liberation movement. Although they were not, the majority of them were not vegan, they were not promoting veganism per se, they did start free grocery programs, they did start free breakfast programs for children. There were, at the height in the 60s, 19 cities that were serving free breakfast to thousands of children around the country. And that was the precursor to the free breakfast program that exists in public schools today. So this is all, and then, the Nation of Islam, for example, they were vegetarian and they promoted healthy eating as part of liberation, right? So these were not issues that were separate. These were issues that were wholly interconnected. If you are talking about liberation of Black people, if you're talking about liberation of yourself, you are talking about changing systems of oppression that includes the food system, the economic system, the political system, the criminal justice system. It includes something as basic as the food that we eat, why we eat it, where we get it, who controls it.
Questions?
Thanks so much for your talk. This may be an obvious question, but I'm wondering if there is any effort to use the fast food stores, the fast food outlets that are in all these communities as gateways for vegan eating. I mean, I'm thinking about the Impossible Burger and their sort of emerging semi-consciousness about this stuff. And is there any effort to see those as possible outlets, gateways, platforms for education or transformation?
No, it is an interesting question. I mean, back in the day, you know, my sister and I were protesting these places, right? And people were looking at us like, excuse us while we go in and eat this food. But yes, absolutely. They're, you know, Beyond Burger, Impossible Burger, they're all trying to make inroads into these places. And I'm a public health nutritionist, right? So and I am an animal rights activist. I am in it for a variety of reasons, probably spiritual reasons, like a bunch of reasons. And it's all circular for me. But primarily my approach is health first. And so I want people to cook more at home from scratch and eat whole plant-based foods. That's the healthiest way to eat. I also recognize that people are eating fast food and that these can be bridge foods, right? I ate them as bridge foods 30 years ago. So there can be a place for these foods. And if you are someone who is primarily focused on animals and not having animals killed, then absolutely, this is a way that you want to go. So yes, these inroads are being taken. I actually was on a panel with Seth Goldman, who started just last week, who started Honest Tea, and is now the chair of the board of Beyond Meat. And you know, he was talking about just how much they want to be in fast food places, be in these places where folks eat. So, you know, there have always been different strands to this, and that is definitely something that can be helpful. Yeah. So on a big level, that is happening. Folks trying to get these vegan meats in there.
Yeah, I found it really striking when everyone was celebrating how Impossible Burger did their test run in St. Louis, and it was really successful at the 59 Burger Kings in St. Louis, and it was really striking that St. Louis alone has 59 Burger Kings. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. I mean, that's, you know.
That's excellent.
And if everybody then gets like a big fries and a sugary drink with that Impossible Burger, then it's not exactly healthy.
Yeah. I mean, that's the issue. You know, I call it bridge food or transition. You don't have to take that bridge to cross over, but a lot of people do. Yeah.
Hi. So I first heard about you when I was on a retreat that was vegan with a bunch of other Black women who were trying to heal from the traumas of the United States. And the person who introduced me to you is someone who suffers from lupus. Mm-hmm. And she said that she is another Black woman. And she said that she went vegan because it was really the only thing that really helped with her lupus. Mm-hmm. And so coming into law school, I had been vegan for about 3 to 4 months because I had to prepare myself for the retreat. And then after I got back from the retreat, I just felt so much better. But I'm in my second year of law school now, and I've been kind of flip-flopping. I only cook plant-based meals in my home. And most of the time I bring my food places, but it gets really difficult when things start to pick up. And then also, as an added factor to that, my mom's side of the family is Italian and my dad's side of the family is Ghanaian. And when I'm either with my family in Italy or with my Italian family, there's a lot of guilt around not eating the food that's being given to you. Mm-hmm. And I would say the same thing happens with my Ghanaian family. Mm-hmm. And while, in Ghana, there's a very large Rastafarian community, so mm-hmm. I was able to eat vegetarian and vegan while I was living there. Mm-hmm. But when I'm with my family, I have to eat what they're cooking. So I guess my question is kind of twofold in terms of.
You want me to come with you and talk to them?
Oh yeah. How do you navigate some of these different cultural and familial pressures around food. And then also, so I'm in the human rights field and I do a lot of traveling. And in order to build bonds with clients and community members, it's really important to partake in the food that they are cooking for you. So how do you navigate these responsibilities to yourself in terms of what's making you feel good, and then these cultural relationships that are so predicated upon food?
Excellent question. So the first thing I would say is to give yourself a break. The transition takes as long as it takes. Your transition is your transition. It took me 1.5 years from hearing Dick Gregory's lecture to actually going vegan. Let me get some water, hold on. So, because this is going to take a minute. So that's what I would say is first give yourself a break, okay? And then secondly, find out what Italian vegan influencers, meetups exist, whether you are going to Italy or whether you are with your family here. Like, find out who they are, where they are, talk to them, connect with them, and see how they do it in their culture, which is yours, and what they eat. And the same with Ghana, and when you go there, the African Hebrew Israelites that I mentioned, they started Soul Vegetarian in the 1980s. Until recently, they were the largest chain of vegan restaurants around the world, 14 locations, including Ghana. They have a long history of being in Ghana. And there is also, just from my own knowledge, I know that there are Ghanaian vegan influencers out there who I'm connected with. So I would reach out to them and find out what they specifically do in that specific culture. But for you, in terms of your work and traveling around and then just being with your family, it all boils down to your own comfort level and your own confidence. And I will tell you that oftentimes, usually what I have found is that when you're new and starting out, you don't have that confidence, right? You don't necessarily have the confidence to say, I'm good, I'm fine, I'll just eat the vegetables, or I'll just, I already ate, whatever the things are that you say, right? And I'm talking specifically about work here. Or you just, decide beforehand to come up with whatever sentences work for you, and you smile and you say them, right? But it all boils down to your ease and confidence with this. If someone were to offer you, I was going to say cocaine, but you might do drugs, I don't know. If someone were to offer you something that you would never do or eat, you would have no problem saying no, right? So something like completely beyond, and they offered it to you and this is what they ate, you could say no. When you get to that point with your veganism, you will be able to, it will be the same. It's just not something you will do. It's just not who you are. And you will find a creative, loving, kind way to say no thank you and sit in the silence and the awkwardness and then proceed, right? That's on you. And when I say that with you, asking you to give yourself a break with it also, okay? You have to get to the point where you just will never do it. And that just takes a click, and whether it's attending talks like this, reading more, connecting with folks, it will happen, right? And so that's what I say to you. It's your ease and confidence level that dictates how other people around you react. And in terms of culture, when we became vegan, I'm from a very large family in DC. My mother went vegan with me when she was in her 50s. She's from South Carolina. She's one of 14. Our extended family have family reunions since I was, for Thanksgiving, since before I was born. And when we first started, we brought tons of vegan food and put it on the table next to the ham and the mac and cheese. And we said, here, eat this food, and this is why you should eat it. And we got teased mercilessly for years until we got to the point where we said, you know what, it doesn't matter if they eat this food or not. We stopped bringing tons of food. We just brought enough for ourselves and a few more people who might want to try it, put it in the kitchen, made our plates, came out and sat with everybody else. And they said, you're still eating that food? You're still eating that rabbit food? You're still eating that crazy food? And we would say, yeah, we are. Yeah, we still feel good. Yeah. I mean, it just was we just stopped talking about it. And if anyone asked us, why aren't you eating this? Why aren't you eating chicken anymore? Why aren't you eating grandma's fried chicken? Why aren't you eating Aunt Anne's ham? We would say, we will talk about it. Let's talk about it after we eat, because we realize that everybody at the table may not want to hear like the real deal about why we're not eating chicken, right? And we respected that. And so we would always say, we can talk about it afterwards. And if they came to us afterwards, then we would tell them why and share resources. And you can do the same. But the thing was, we were there to commune with our family. And over food that they ate, food that we ate, we were all sitting eating together. And you have to be able to have the confidence to weather the teasing. My mother, of her 14 who survived into their of the ones who survived into their senior years, she's the only one who doesn't have chronic disease. She's 83, will be 84, still fit, still healthy, same shape she had, same weight that she had in her 30s and 50s, health markers of someone who's 50. They saw that and they started asking questions and asking her to come help them. So that's my long answer. I hope that's helpful.
Questions?
Over here.
No.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. This has been really enlightening and informative.
You're welcome.
I have a kind of two-part question. One is
Okay.
what you said that Black Americans go vegan, or Black people go vegan at a higher rate than the general adult population, and I was just wondering if you could maybe expand briefly on why that is. And then the second question I have is, when I think about plant-based eating in my own family, and particularly the women who do most of the cooking for the family, two of the big constraints that I see is just time, and then of course financial, especially when you look at Black women. And I think that's probably true not only in my family, but for many Black women across the country. And so I'm wondering in what ways your study and the research and work you've done has been able to address those to the best you can.
Sure. So your first question was, gosh, I forgot.
Why Black people are vegan at higher rates than the general adult population.
It was a Pew Research study that just came out saying that 8% of Black folks were vegan and vegetarian. Although the Post article just said vegan. I contacted Pew, and they, said it was vegan and vegetarian. And for whites, it's 3%. For Latinx, it's 1%. They did not do Asian Americans, Native Americans. And so the reason that the article stated is that it was cultural. It was based on cultural influences like music, like hip hop, right? So if you think about KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions back in the 80s, they had a song called Beef, and that was a very influential song and helped a lot of people change the way they eat, including Bryant Terry, right? And so who is a good friend of mine and talks about this too. So there are cultural reasons, but you have to understand too that, as I mentioned, this is plant-based food, not necessarily plant-exclusive, is something that we carried with us from our West and Central African heritage to here. And then we were primarily agrarian after enslavement, and we're growing our own fruits and vegetables out of necessity. My mother, growing up in South Carolina, They had meat once a week on Sundays. The rest of the time, it was fruits and vegetables and grains. When we moved into cities starting, during the Great Migration, we brought these same practices with us. Had it not been for this onslaught by fast food companies that were subsidized by the federal government after King's assassination in '68, more of us would be doing this. But we've always eaten this way. There has been no break, right? It's just that fewer people were doing it because of these influences. So again, you have people like Dick Gregory, Rosa Parks, Angela Davis, Sonia Sanchez, like all of these people who were doing it because it was cultural, for health, and also because it was a part of liberation, the civil rights movement, the Black liberation movements that they were a part of. So there are various reasons. And then there are people, Black folks who are animal rights activists, who've been doing it for that reason, for environmentalists. So it's not, I learned, it's never a surprise to me because I learned about veganism from Black people, through Black culture. And most people I know who are vegan are Black, even though I've been doing this work and this is my profession still. So this is never a surprise to me. You know what I mean? It just is. It has just always been this way. I think that we connect the dots also, right? As Black people and as Black women in particular. Once you hear, as I said, the connections that are made, you are already living and experiencing these interconnected things, right? Food makes sense as a part of that, as a system of oppression. So that's my response to that. And for your second question, what is it again?
Thank you. Yeah, just how to address financial and time constraints when it comes to.
That's across the board, right? So financially, it can be cheaper to eat a whole food plant-based diet than to eat processed and packaged foods. It may not be as available. That's an issue. But if you have access to bulk ingredients, to whole grains, to fresh fruits and vegetables, or even canned or frozen, it is cheaper than eating processed food. It's cheaper than eating meat, to have beans and lentils and other types of ingredients. So it doesn't have to be as expensive. You don't have to shop at Whole Foods. In terms of time, we're just in a culture that does not prioritize cooking food. And it may be at different points in your life. Like as a student, it may be more difficult, but I did it 33 years ago before there were stores to go to, because it was something that I had to do. There was no other choice. I had to make it work. And so, it can be done. As students and as parents, as mothers, this is part of what I'm talking about with the program, like showing people how to make quick dishes, 15 minutes or fewer, and how to make it delicious and healthy. So it can be done with some planning and some knowledge.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I give really long answers. I apologize.
This is great. It's fantastic. Any other questions? Did you have a question?
Hi, thank you very much.
Sure.
I have two questions.
Okay.
One, which is whether some part of the protest or civil rights movement and vegetarianism can be traced back to Gandhi. And could you say more about how Black neighborhoods have been targeted by fast food restaurants? Was it supposed to be economic stimulus, or the same reasons that menthol cigarettes or malt beverages have targeted Black neighborhoods? Could you say more about how that works or worked?
Sure. So for your first question, Martin Luther King did go and meet with Gandhi and was influenced by, nonviolence. That's for sure. So yes, that is historically correct. And for your second question about fast foods, what happened after the rebellions across the country over the assassination of King, the government was trying to figure out why this happened. and what can be done, what could be done about it. And one of the paths that was, one of the things that was talked about was financial economic resources for Black folks in these cities, right? And that was something that was easier to do than to change other types of systems, the education system, the political system, the criminal justice system, right? So at the same time, you had companies like McDonald's in particular who were looking to increase their market share, right? They were just looking for new consumers. And white folks were fleeing the cities after the rebellions and going to suburbs. And there was lots of abandoned property. There was lots of opportunity, economic opportunity to come into cities and locate fast food places there and have them so ubiquitous that people could just walk to them as opposed to getting in a car and driving in the suburbs, right, where white folks were moving. So then you had the federal government that was giving subsidies to companies like McDonald's to start franchises that were Black owned, right? So you had people who were seeing this as something that was positive for Black folks who were seeing it this way, civil rights leaders who were seeing this as economic opportunity where it did not exist, right, otherwise. So you had this conflation of things that were happening. But the primary factor was that these fast food places decided that they wanted to, kind of target Black consumers for, just to increase their profits, and that, and they could use subsidies from the federal government and economic stimulus to help create these franchises. And you have these partnerships with Black organizations and media that exist today, with all types of organizations that are sponsored by McDonald's and Coca-Cola. McDonald's has a website called 365 Black. So on the one hand, they're promoting very unhealthy food that leads to chronic disease. And on the other hand, they're promoting cultural ties and providing money, right, and jobs. So, and because Black organizations and institutions are so underfunded, deliberately so, obviously, as compared to white institutions, they take the money. That's the issue we still are facing. But we have agency. I mean, sometimes people say, "Oh my God, you're talking about us as victims," but you have to talk about the actual cause of the problem, right? How this problem happened, and within that, we've always had agency to resist and change and organize and create other systems around it. So I want to say that too. Yes.
Sort of on that same note, what institutions or organizations are assisting in this movement?
And this one, 10,000 Black vegan women?
This one, but more generally in educating African American folks about health, veganism, vegetarianism.
A lot. There's so many. There's the Black Women's Health Imperative, there's Girl Trek, there's Black Girls Run, and then there are general organizations like the NAACP, what is Al Sharpton's organization? I forget. But they're national Black organizations that have always been doing this work. In terms of promoting health, right? The issue for me is that there aren't large national organizations that specifically are talking about veganism. So as part of the work that I've been doing over these decades, I've been consulting with some of these organizations to create plant-based curricula here, plant-based programs here, but it's not a central tenet, right? And a lot of the reason is that they get funding from Coca-Cola and other places, right? So they have less incentive to promote 100% plant-based diets, exclusively. So there are organizations that talk about health and promote health in general in a variety of ways, but that are not talking specifically about veganism, and that needs to exist. If you take something like Black Lives Matter, right? Very, very powerful organization very effective. I think that the statistics are now that about 1,000 police kill about 1,000, at least 1,000 people or around 1,000 people a year. The latest ones, stats that I've seen, who are unarmed, and I think about a third of those may be black folks, right? So that is about 300 people a year, black folks who are killed by police. And you have, just among black women that I'm talking about, 180 a day who are killed from food, right? From unhealthy foods that are being eaten. That total is about 300,000 black folks a year, right? So you have 300,000. Where is the movement for the 300,000? Where is the organization for the 300,000? This is just not a comparison game. I'm not trying to compare trauma and oppression. I am simply saying that this is needed, but this is not as known about and talked about and activated around as this 300. You're welcome. Hi.
It strikes me that there's maybe like an opportunity for kind of for lack of a better comparison, Indian-style non-participation movement, and I'm guessing there has been this study, so I'm curious if you know what direction I can go in to try and figure out like what percentage of the labor force historically and like essentially the work that goes into the food system is done by people of minority races, black people specifically, versus what percentage of like ownership, directorship, and profits is seen by that same group, because it's probably hugely disparate, I would imagine.
It is hugely disparate. I mean, you just know that just because of the system. But an organization that particularly works on that aspect of the food system is called Food Empowerment Project, and the director is Lauren Ornelas. And if she hasn't spoken here, would be an awesome presenter.
Yeah, she has.
She has? Okay, good. So I would refer you to the Food Empowerment Project, FEP, for that information specifically about the food system, the workers, and as compared to the owners of the main places we get our food, the 5 major companies.
I know a lot of folks were disappointed during the one Democratic debate when Cory Booker was asked if other people should follow his vegan diet, and he said no. Let me say it again, no. And then he switched to talking about Afghanistan. A lot of people see that as like a really missed opportunity. So I didn't know if you were in contact with him or his office and had heard anything further on that.
I have not. I have not heard anything further about that, but I know I've met Cory Booker. I don't know him personally or as a friend. We've been in the same same panels together, in the Invisible Vegan Together documentary. But so no, I don't know. I just know that he is doing the work, in terms of promoting it. But that, yeah, I agree with you. I was surprised and not surprised. Yeah. It's an unfair question, really.
I thought it was, I thought it was like a softball, and it was a really good opportunity for him to really talk about those issues.
Yeah.
And I know he does members of Congress members of the Black Caucus cook for each other and provide meals.
Right, and he always has vegan.
Yeah,
right.
It's really, yeah.
And there's a Congressional Vegetarian Association now that has events that we've both been at. Cory, I've been at with Cory Booker. You have the question, but then obviously there's not a question about to the candidates who are omnivores about the standard American diet, right? Yeah. And so they're going to harp on that, his veganism as a quick way to kind of dismiss him. Yeah. So he's navigating that. We get it, right? But so in that sense, it's an unfair question, but it was an opportunity for him to do something different, as his campaign was all about, right? Yeah. But it didn't happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Thank you so much for coming today, and thanks for everything you're doing. I'm just wondering, once you are successful this year with this goal, I'm sure you will be successful. What comes next for you? What do you think? What do you think the next? Yeah, is it 20,000, or is there a next phase for the movement in general that you see as being the next part of your strategy or the broader strategy?
Thank you for that question. I actually had a whole little section on that I was going to include, but because it's being recorded, I was like, I don't know if I want to document that. I might change my mind. But you asked the question. So basically, yeah, so what I want to do is actually start this national organization and use this as the momentum to do that, because we're getting such huge response around it. Yeah, I mean, this I feel is the culmination of my life's work, my passion, you know, focusing particularly on Black women, 24 million Black women and girls in the United States, to help us live healthier, longer, freer lives. So yes, my goal right now is to get 10,000 for this year and to build on that momentum to create an organization that will allow me to expand this work to reach, you know, as many of those 24 million women and girls that I can. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much, Tracye. Are you doing anything to survey the 10,000 participants to see what the knock-on effect? Presumably a lot of them will be cooking for their families, and it would be potentially interesting to gather that data of how many other people that they've affected, even if only partially.
Yes, actually, so it's tricky because I have created a survey that I want to use, but I'm figuring it out because it's a free program, it's a public program, and I don't, you know, it's not a research study, right? And so I don't want people to feel like in order to participate, they must, you know, provide this personal information, you know. So I'm trying to figure that how I can just gather some helpful information that will be helpful to me and to other women and perhaps to the women who are providing it, and still balancing the type of, you know, 21-day fresh start to this is. So yeah, I'm working on that. And if it doesn't happen with this one, you know, because it's the introduction, then once the bigger organization is created, then for sure. I mean, my goal is to actually not really focus on women who are unhealthy, but focus on people who are healthy and eating whole food, plant-based, and how they did it, and how we can use that to help other people with resources and programs. The Black Women's Health Imperative did something really interesting, which is survey 40,000 women recently, and they focused on women who considered themselves healthy based on different parameters and how and why they were that way. And that's the focus that I want to have as well.
No, I think that is the important part, and there's a lot we can't quantify that people often want us to. With a few of the organisations I've worked with, we've done it in a sort of soft way where at the end of the period we've said, thank you so much for coming on this journey or whatever it might be, and is there anything that you want to share in terms of the way this has affected your broader life or family? There's a, you know, anyway, we can talk and come up with some ideas.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you. Have you seen any like state or federal vegan programs in schools K through 12?
So yes, I mean, in Washington, D.C., actually helped the D.C. public school system create a plant-based curriculum for K through 12 in 2009, 2010. That happened, and then it went away. So that is a system, school system by school system issue, you know. And the New York public school system has now instituted Meatless Mondays. Eric Adams, the Brooklyn Borough president, was one of the leads on that. He's trying to get processed meats taken, he and others, Amy Hamlin of Healthy School Food, I'm an advisory board member of their organization. They are trying to get processed meat taken out of the entire New York school system. So there are organizations state by state that are doing good things. But you know, it's a struggle because you have you have a USDA that mandates that certain foods be sold for the benefit of the food industry. Yeah, but they exist. Folks are doing the work.
I think Eric Adams was helpful in getting the Meatless Monday passed in New York schools as well, correct? Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Other questions? Any other questions?
Thank you all for hanging around.
All right, thank you. Join me again in thanking Tracye McQuirter for joining us today.
Thank you.